On November 27, 1942, French Admiral Jean de la Barre ran completely out of room for maneuver and scuttled his own fleet in Toulon harbor, rather than have it fall into the hands of the Nazis or the British. This ignominious decision illustrates the painful dilemma many proud Frenchmen faced during the Second World War. But it also illustrates the bad decision that their pride too often led them to make. The Second World War is an amazing story, the Allies snatching victory from the jaws of defeat against this appalling tyrant and impossibly long odds. It shows the importance of countless small, courageous decisions people make, like the Poles who managed to smuggle the Enigma German coding machine out as their homeland collapsed. But the French Navy's decision, unfortunately, was not in that category. It might have made all the difference in the wrong way at a critical time in the war. Britain and France, of course, were allies in 1939, as they had been from 1914 to 1918. But the French army turned in a spectacularly, even puzzlingly inept performance in the spring of 1940, and Paris fell. Some Frenchmen fought on, including Charles de Gaulle, who swallowed his pride, took shelter in England, and issued a famous appeal on June 18 to his countrymen to rally to the Free French. Now, there were French pilots in the Battle of Britain. Some French soldiers from some of the overseas colonies joined the Allied cause right away. As the tides of war changed, the trickle became a flood. There were over 1.3 million French in the Free French forces by VE Day. But the French Navy, when it really counted most, made the wrong decision. Now, the Germans promised the Vichy authorities they would never try to seize the fleet, but as Churchill pointed out at the time, anybody who still believed Hitler's promises in 1940 was a chump, and Churchill was no chump. He couldn't get at the fleet in Toulon, but he struck at the French Navy in its overseas colonies. He sent force aides from Gibraltar to demand the surrender of a French squadron in Oran, and when the French refused, the British opened fire, sinking one World War I-era battleship with over 900 killed, badly damaging another one, and grounding one modern battleship. But another, the Strasbourg, with a destroyer escort, broke free and made its way back to Toulon. A flagship of the French fleet, the Richelieu, further south in Dakar, was damaged by a British attack, but not severely. It had actually fought against the Free French before eventually switching sides. In 1943, it went to the United States for a refit, spent the rest of the war cruising the Indian Ocean alongside the British Navy. But by then, de la Barre had made his fateful decision, and by then it no longer mattered. This decision was most important early in the war, when the Allies were threatened with defeat, above all by the German U-boats, sinking merchant ships, trying to strangle Britain. As Winston Churchill would later say, the only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. And the French Navy could have made a huge difference, not so much the battleships, but they could have helped hunt the Bismarck, as their battle cruisers and 71 destroyers with which France started the war, essential to convoy duty. So much so that Winston Churchill traded bases in the Caribbean in September 1940 for 50 obsolete and unwieldy American destroyers from the First World War. Something like 1 in 8 Canadian merchant seamen who set out on convoy duty never came home. The French Navy could have made a huge difference, and I put it to you that it would have been a much greater source of pride to a Frenchman to be able to say, when Paris fell, I made a break for the open sea and I fought alongside the Allies, rather than I sat out the war, at least we didn't join the German side, sank our own ships when it no longer really mattered. Luckily, this decision didn't change the course of the war, but it might have in the wrong direction. And that is a shameful thing to contemplate, and a lucky escape in retrospect.